Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in for another episode of watching me randomly code something. Today we have a file entitled Scraper. So my intention is to scrape this particular website. They have a ton of very useful kind of resources, course materials, practice materials for legal study. So my intention is to kind of download those resources so I can refer to them offline. But before we jump straight into it, I wanted to talk very briefly about the legality and the ethics of downloading and scraping off the internet. It's a pretty topical subject right now because there are so many businesses just scraping and mass downloading off your Facebook pages, social media. It's really quite disturbing when you think about it. Me as an end user, you, your friends, your family, not a lot of people expected these businesses to go through Facebook and just wholesale download all of your private personal information, all of your photos, whatever is available. And, you know, it gets even worse when they are using back channels or using other people's accounts to try and get your information. So we want to do this properly. So I am not in favor of just randomly downloading things off the net. We look at the terms of use, the terms of service, whatever kind of legal documentation is available to make sure we're doing the right thing. It's a little harder when it is individuals and their own kind of social media pages. Not a lot of people bother to put legal text. But if we're looking at big faceless corporations, Amazon, for example, they have very clearly put legalese at usually the footer of their website. So here we have conditions of use. You'll see terms of use, terms of service, conditions of service, all sorts of these kind of legal pages for you to look at. And if you dig through them, a lot of them will prohibit you from scraping the website. So here on Amazon, they grant you a license, a limited, non-exclusive, non-transferable, non-sublicensable license to access and make personal and non-commercial use of the Amazon.ca services. You're going to need to go a little deeper in, but the license does not include the right to download. Let's zoom this in a little. They don't give you the right to downloading, copying, or other use of account information, or any use of data mining, robots, or similar data gathering and extraction tools. So very clearly, Amazon doesn't want you automatically scraping through their web page. Now, you as the end user, they are perfectly fine with you looking at their website and, purchasing products, getting information visually by looking at their products. But they're not okay with this kind of data gathering extraction process. If we look at my Target website, for one, it's a legal education society, so they have their legal documents, their ducks in a row. What you're looking for is not the privacy policy, sometimes maybe the copyright. This site is a little awkward because the entire purpose of the site is to provide legal documents for you to use in a commercial setting. So for example, this site will provide you with template wills or contracts for you to resell to your clients, assuming you're a lawyer or a law firm or something like that. But we do have a terms of use. And so really what's interesting here is, number one, you need an online subscription. I have a valid subscription to CLEBC. But they also have this license and permitted use section. They have prohibitions, which I am going to follow judiciously. I'm not going to share my username and password, obviously, or decompile, reverse engineer their site. I'm not going to reproduce, publish, distribute, redistribute their thing. So I will be moving this window off screen from time to time so that you don't get to see their treasured templates, and you won't get to see me enter my password and username. But what they do allow is for you to print out, copy, download, or distribute in electronic or print form reasonable portions of the product for the subscriber's internal use. And that download sounds like what I'm doing. And I'm allowed to download and adapt selected sections of the forms, precedents, checklists, jury instructions, blah, 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 quote an excerpt from the product. So in short, I have a non-exclusive, non-transferable license to access, retrieve, and view the product for the purposes of law practice or legal study, which is my intention. So what I'm saying here is you want to be careful when you scrape a website. Number one, ethically, are you doing the right thing as a gut feeling? Is it a little disturbing? Is it a little strange? Is it creepy even to scrape people's personal social media pages? I definitely think so. And then on the legal side, you have the right to do that. So make sure you don't kind of get into a wrong side of the law, and even just don't do anything that you don't think is right. And downloading and automatically downloading information off the internet is an area which you need to be careful about. Anyways, that's enough of kind of a rant or a spiel. I will shut this off and start programming a scraper to download what's available on this website. So stay tuned. Okay, so the last bit of stuff I was doing was pretty erratic, so I thought I would just explain what's been happening so far. So let's get back to the CLE website, and you'll find what I first did was go into the console and just expand out all of these. They actually don't load automatically on the page. I thought that was a bit strange until you see the sheer quantity of it. So, um, um, so once we've expanded it out, what I then did was just extract all of the links out. And so that's what this giant text file is. And, you can see there's a lot of documents available, a lot of links to go through. So now the next step was to try and go into each of those links and fetch out the document. So it seems like, from my very poor sampling of like 2 or 3, that there is a downloadable link. I don't know if that's true for all 12,000 documents. So we'll have to find out eventually whether every single one has a link. But regardless, what that means is that we can go in and fetch it. I tried using requests to do it, and stupid me, of course, what is necessary is to log in. So the next step was to use Playwright or Selenium, whichever one you want to do, and go into each page and, well, go through a login process first, and then go into each page. Now, where I'm stuck right now is that nothing is popping up. It's like when I run this very basic code of launching a new browser, nothing on my computer here is launching up. So something is wrong. It might just be I haven't pip installed properly. I find that a bit strange. Might just be something stupid with Windows, so I might need to restart my computer. But nevertheless, the plan is to have a browser kind of automate that process, go through each link and download it. And that would just be the precedent library. That was my main goal, but you'll see that there are other things that are useful. The practice manuals should be also very useful as well. So I think that'll be the next step. So stay tuned, and we will keep kind of banging our heads against the wall as there inevitably is in scraping a website. There are kind of walls and hurdles along the way that you have to account for. Okay, so we made a ton of progress in the last hour or so. I left my computer on for about half an hour to actually go through the scraping process. So if you take a look here, we have been very successful at downloading all of the documents on the page. There's some 2,000 plus files here and all sorts of things. And that was, as we discussed earlier, from the various precedents. Okay. What should be noted is I wanted to make sure I capture all of the surrounding information too. If I'm just looking through here, it's nearly, well, it's still very useful, but it's very hard to find things. So the first thing I did was basically save their list. Remember when I used JavaScript to kind of expand everything? I just saved that list, just the HTML code. And so we have this very, very long list available. It's probably, like, I can format it a bit later to make it a bit easier, but if you take a look at it on VS Code, it's fairly easy for you to kind of expand and close various sections. So yeah, it's useful to have. I can definitely clean this up a lot, but I just don't think it's worthwhile to do so right now. The other thing is I did create a few additional files. So let's just run through the scraper really quickly. First, it's super simple when you get to it. We had that list of precedents. I used a separate set of tools here just to go through the precedents, get rid of all the duplicates in there so that we whittled down from about like 12,000, 13,000 lines to about 2,000 documents. From there, let's go back to Scraper. From there, I read each line. Each line is a URL. We go there, we click the download. So we click here. But what I realized is I also wanted to say, first of all, the name of the document, but also this kind of metadata up top. And then after a while, I decided, this preview is actually also really useful. I mean, it's basically the inside of the document. And if in the future I want to build like a front end to it, where I can just go through all of these documents very quickly, this is much nicer to work with than a document file. So I decided to just go into each URL, click the download so it goes into my computer. Then I take that HTML code and the metadata and the preview. And then finally, I have the name of the document saved into the CSV file, and then I changed it to a JSON file. So very, very useful if I want to build a front end to this. Again, it's all about being able to put this all together into a front end later on. Anyways, I will be scraping other sections of the site in a moment. I don't want this video to drag out too long, so I might break into different chunks, but there's a lot of good stuff in there. So we got the really important ones, and then we'll see what else we can get. Awesome. Thanks for being patient. I waited another half hour or so for it to go through the website, and I made some minor adjustments. So you'll see the code has changed just a tiny bit. The general idea is basically, well, it is exactly the same. There's a few minor things. So for example, I had to replace the colon in the names because of course Windows doesn't like to use colons in the names. I have a few more try except blocks because not every, I assumed every manual would have the same pieces, but it wasn't. So yeah, it took a bit to run through, but let me just show you really quickly what has happened. So, of course, there were 49 documents I was supposed to get out, and we have 49 items. Obviously, I can't share an entire document with you, but I just want to show you guys really quickly how it looks. You get, of course, basic HTML. So I made sure to take a copy of their CSS file as well, but I think I'd customize my own rather than take theirs because they had a pretty plain looking one anyways. But scroll all the way down, you'll see each of these pieces available. But more interestingly, if you take a look at it in terms of the HTML, the formatting is a little ugly. You know what? Let's pick a smaller file. I still have to go through each of these and have VS Code kind of beautify it pretty printed out. So it's just going through that process right now. And there we go. Okay, so what I did was I went through each of these blocks. So the idea is here. We have, just refresh this. We have several major sections as front matter, chapters, forms, precedents, and checklists. There's another one called related documents. The other ones, like, really not so important. These are search tools, if I have it on a digital copy anyways, this isn't helpful to me, so I didn't bother scraping this. I just really wanted the content. And so the idea is to go into each one of these major blocks, click that piece. So over here, you'll see we're looking at this. We click it, and then we click each one of these links and download this section. So if you go look at it, this section is stored in this main content inner div. And so every time it's in the same place. So it's been very easy. We click here, go through each link, and then we click the next big block and click each link, and then the next big block, each link, and so on. What happens then is I have this major as the big block, and you'll see, chapters, related documents. There's only 2 in this one. And then we break it down. So each one has a number of smaller pieces, and I've downloaded each one in turn to have that data available. Oh, I should probably add that into git ignore. So I don't want these files to show up on my GitHub. I just want the code, the scraping code, available for you guys to take a look at, just to make sure I don't get into too much trouble. I will have these kind of miscellaneous JavaScript commands as well, just so that you guys can see. But the main logic is here in the scraper. So I'm going to remove that as well, make sure it doesn't show up. But I use some of these JavaScript commands to get a list of all of the practice manuals off this site right here. So I use JavaScript to get each link down this list, and I pasted it into this list here as practice manual links. I went down, go through the driver, go through the login process, which, is not going to be provided because, you shouldn't see my username and password. Then I just go through each link. For each link, go to that site, get the name. I've used Sleep a little bit because you'll find that early on, I ran into a lot of trouble. Basically, I was trying to download things before they finished loading. So adding a bit of time made it take, a half hour to go through all of these documents, but it just made it super smooth. So instead of watching it and trying to make sure it goes really quickly, I just set this up, go out for a coffee, come back, and it's all done. Takes a bit of time, but we're good. So for each major section, I've kind of labeled it here, but I find that big link. So this front matter is this piece right here. And I need to make sure this is a mistake, this is a change that I had to do on the fly, because what I found was I started opening and writing into the file before I even caught whether this existed. So I put this right up front because if I can't find this element, it just skips, goes to the next one, skips, goes to the next one. If they can't find, say, front matter or chapters or forms and precedents. So before, I was writing this HTML code, just marking up my div block already before it hits the error, and so it never closes, and it had this funky, like, I didn't have properly formatted HTML because of that. So move this up front. I write in some code to make sure that I'm blocking each of those sections out. I click that front matter piece so that it shows this here, and then now I find each element, each of the A tags, and put them into a list. And then I iterate through that list. I click each item, get the title, get the inner HTML, and then I write it in. Again, I write this opening block just to kind of separate them so I know that this is a minor block, this is a major block, and then I close it up at the end. Then next block, this is exactly the same thing. I just change the names a little, but chapters, forms and precedents, checklists, related documents. When you look at the code, it's all very simple. And one of the things you find when you're scraping websites or reading tutorials is it seems so simple, but the difficulty is that you need to understand how the site is structured, and then you gotta run it, check if it works, and if it doesn't, you need to look at it, run it several times, make sure the logic makes sense. It's like any other puzzle. Once you see the solution, it's super simple, but it's what's frustrating about these tutorials. They make it look super simple, but I think this whole process, minus kind of the time it took to run through it, probably took me 2.5 hours, but there's really not that much code in this scraper or the precedent scraper. And that's all there is to it. I got it all out, and again, there's a lot of options here for me to kind of pretty up this document, but I don't think that's necessary until I need to read through all of this. So it's just for my own library here, and that's been very successful. Let's see, what else do I need to say? I thought I might get these other pieces as well, but I've looked through them and they're really not going to be all that useful. So I'm going to end the video here, but definitely leave some comments if you have any questions. I'm happy to run through this code. It's on GitHub, so you can play around with it. But you'll find that this is very rough. This is an actual process. This isn't cleaned up in any way to to make it into a nice tutorial. This is, you'll see where I've kind of hit mistakes and where I had problems along the way to make this work. So hopefully you guys found that all useful. It was frustrating and fun at the same time, like any good puzzle.